All right. And while we wait for the stream to start in earnest, um,
Hmm.
Persona 4 is pretty good.
Yeah, so I hear.
My complaint about the pixel inconsistency notwithstanding.
Mhm. I think yeah, but I mean I think you're on the money there. Like that's a rough like diagonal pixels are not fun,
Yeah.
right? Uh, when you're sort of dealing with those. Okay, so let's sort of see where we're at. Okay, yeah, so we're streaming now. So let me, yeah, the event has started. Okay, yeah, let me just repost the event. Should I repost the event or should I do the
Um, I think
we
it's
are
fine to just like post the YouTube link. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just doing in general because like it's on point to like spamming announcements with it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we know who's coming to the stream at this point.
True. It is
The
very interesting playing Persona 4 after playing Persona 5. Um
yeah,
because like it's very clear that like thematically Persona 5 is very much a sequel to Persona 4. Um
hmm
but it's also like Persona 4 does a lot of some things better and a lot of other things worse just by being made previously.
right, yeah. I think that yeah, I would be pretty interested in your thoughts when if you decide to keep going kind of back down the catalog
Yeah.
to where you feel three kind of fits in. Because when I played five, like it did feel like three and four kind of combined, right?
Okay.
In
Yeah.
some interest and with new stuff, right? So I think that yeah, a lot of the social stuff from like four, right, has been advanced, right, in five, in like sort of much more meaningful ways, right? Um, and then I think more of the thematic stuff, right? Where like, hey, what are the fun things that we're summoning? What are they saying about society?
Yeah.
In quotations, right? I think that started in three, right? And I think
Mhm.
that like three is interesting because like tonally it is like it starts off as one thing and the entire game is about that thing, right? This sort of shadow like looming specter
Yeah.
of depression, right? And oh yeah, I can't say that on YouTube. uh
but I understand. Yeah.
what right, yeah. Let's say self-unalivement, right? Like yeah, all right. It's about that, but it's also about like apathy in sort of modern society, right? How like that
Mhm.
sort of alienates people, and essentially the people that you end up kind of confronting, right, are folks that are like so alienated, right, that they are yeah, they have a fundamentally different view, right, of society, and also like kind of want it to end,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, in what initially like you're like okay you're just a villain, right, and then persona style like hey you get to learn about like their day to day, you run into them right at the mall right, and then you're like oh okay you're a normal person, and then you had some a set of circumstances that sort of shapes your view, right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm probably gonna move on to Persona 3 Reload at some point.
yes,
From what I've been
reload does seem
told,
to be a
yeah, that seems to be the ideal way to play Persona 3 now. Because
yes,
a lot of things have been modernized, which make
mhm.
it more in line with 4 and 5.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I am a
so
little curious as to the less modern systems it has in place.
Yeah, so I do think well the big thing Reload improves, right, is Tartarus, right,
Yeah.
which is the sort of big mega dungeon that that Persona 3's entire structure is based on.
Yeah.
Um, and while like Tartarus was extremely cool, like back when this came out on the PS2, right, there were some let's say more than easy exploitable mechanics that allowed you to do basically the equivalent of the Harvest Moon one thing, where
Oh
like
yeah,
like so basically the idea is that like hey you sort of do these explorations each night, right? And then you're slowly making your way up the tower, right? And it's supposed to line up with sort of where the months end up. But what
yeah,
ends up happening is that the exhaustion mechanics aren't punishing enough, so you just hit you just hit the barriers each time,
yeah.
right? On the first night that you're there. Okay, all right. So Vibrant Fervor is in chat. Hello. Sorry, Vibrant Fervor. Isaiah and I were talking about Persona, as is the case.
Yeah.
I think yeah, three reload would be a good sort of follow up. For four, are you playing Golden or are you playing
Yeah,
base
I'm
four?
I'm playing Golden and I'm playing a modded version of Golden that
Mhm.
re-implements the cut Yosuke romance um,
Right.
and then does some minor changes to Naoto's social links as well. Aside from that,
Yeah.
no significant changes to the core systems.
Probably by the time you get to three reload, the FemC modders will will have will have had their day will have had their day in court. Uh, they are and again I'm a person that like did enjoy that additional content P3P, so I'm pretty glad that there are folks that are pretty dedicated to getting it restored.
Yeah,
Because yeah, for again, I understand but like budget reasons why like Atlas would be like, no, we don't want to like reshoot all of the anime sequences, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like with the FMC, right? Um, but yeah, it is a huge missed opportunity, right? That like when you get a remake, you don't make it like the full definitive version, right?
yeah,
There's still stuff that's missing. Um, okay, so yeah, I think let's give Isla, Reiko, and the others like 3-ish minutes
yeah.
to sort of hop in. And then once they've sort of sounded off in chat, we will be ready to begin.
All right,
Um,
sounds good.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then three, I think, like is obviously the next checkpoint point, and I think like you're probably gonna like sort of like stop your journey there.
Yeah,
But
I think
if you
it's
do get the
likely that
urge,
that's the case.
check out one and two.
Yeah,
They are wild.
I
Two
do
two as a duology is still like amazing, right? That it exists.
I do want to experience 1 and 2, but I am afraid because
It doesn't resemble modern Persona,
yeah,
like like it barely resembles it, right? Like it's basically like yeah, like within mainline iterations they fundamentally change what the genre of the game is,
yeah,
right? In three, and then it is just sort of continued down that path. But I think they're still worth checking out, because I remember like reading about like one sort of infamous kind of like thing, and I went back and played it, and I'm like, this is just a good ass like PS1 era Atlas RPG, right?
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of jank, right? Kind of with it. And then two is a refinement of one, and is bonkers and blasts off into space, right? And then in the second iteration, sticks the landing. This is something that like I can't say for like every PS1 JRPG, right? Like that is extremely high concept, right?
Would
Is
you
that was the most surprising part.
if I
Yeah.
play the first two Persona games, would you recommend me play them in order or in reverse order? Because I have been playing the Persona games in
Yes,
reverse order up until
yes,
now.
so you will have to play them in order because you don't have to, but like characters from Persona 1 show up in 2.
Ah, okay, yeah,
Because they yeah, that are sort of like time gapped, right? And then there are sort of links within that set of three games.
okay,
So I would recommend if you can grab the PSP version of Persona 1, right? That's the most updated version, I
okay,
believe, so far. And then, yeah, they did PSP versions of the Persona 2, Innocent Sin, right, and Eternal Punishment,
hmm
right, which you can grab as well. There's significant changes, right, that they made from the PS1 games, but I think that it's still good. Okay, Rocker Virus is also in chat. Hello. We are gonna give other folks like one more minute, and then we'll jump right in. Hopefully, Persona talk uh, isn't too distracting yet. But yeah, lots to cover today. We have a plugin tutorial in front of us. And if you have some time, we will be checking out Deck Builder Fantasy, which is done by a fellow member of the server, Dr. Stella Splutterworth, um, who, I think made a really cool game using 157. I wish 160 was available to them. Uh,
I still
but
have
yeah,
not played it. I've booted it up to make sure it works, but I haven't actually hit new
yeah,
game yet.
yeah. Um, it is very breezy, right? I think that's definitely something I can say in their favor, right? Is
Hmm.
that they do make it feel fast,
Okay.
which is pretty good. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we waited long enough. If other folks join in later, we'll fill them in sort of as we go. So Isaiah, take it away. What are we covering
Yeah,
today?
so today we're going to
Um,
cover Windows Selectable, and we're also going to get into Window Command. Um, Last time we really got into Window Base. Once you understand all three of these classes, you will pretty much understand all of RPG Maker's UI, except for Window Battle Log, which frightens me. Um, but so Windows Selectable. Let me open up MS Paint. So if Window Base is I'm now copying that one game dev streamer that everybody posts shorts of. Um, so if Window
Part
Base,
software
yeah, that's the one. He invented opening up MS Paint. I'm pretty sure. Hold on, in order to really replicate it,
opening.
I need
Yeah, opening up Island Paint has been a long like story tradition amongst programmers, right? So uh,
Pirate Software does
you
the
can definitely
black
say they
background.
yeah they do the black background. I think they use like orange-ish for their contrast color. Um,
Okay.
it does vary per stream. Yeah.
So window base we talked about it, is a window in which you can draw things. I'm drawing a smiley face, and that's window base. Window selectable is a list of items that are all drawn the same way. Pretend these lines all look exactly the same. And then within window selectable, assuming you can activate it, you can interact with the window by scrolling between them. This is my cursor moving up and down in the window. Um, so this is going to be the first window that we can make in which the player can actually interact directly with it. Um, so there are a couple functions that window selectable has that allow us to do that. There's a like cursor left, cursor right, cursor up, cursor down. Those are functions that handle that. Oh, that's name input. Those are functions that actually handle the navigation. We generally don't need to mess with these. There have been a couple situations in which I have hand programmed like a an override of cursor up that goes, hey, if you get to the top, change windows. But generally speaking, RPG Maker does not let you navigate windows just by navigating windows. If you are changing between windows, you have to hit a button for that. Um, so,
So an example of this within card game combat would be if any of you are using Party UIA, that if you're moving left and right on the hand and then you hit up and you have the party window available, it'll actually go up to the party window, and then that is sort of an item list that you can kind of move down, and you can select another party member to peek at their hand. That would be an example of the
yeah,
cursor up override that
I'll show this in
Isaiah's talking
action.
about.
Yeah. Yeah, in card game combat, if you hit up, it activates another window. That's me overriding the cursor up function. Generally, the main thing about window selectable that we want to look at are these two functions: draw all items and draw item. Now you will notice that window selectable's draw item function is completely empty. And there's a reason for that, and that's that at no point in RPG Maker's code will you ever see the text says new window selectable. No part of RPG Maker's code adds a object of class window selectable. Instead, all classes inherit behavior from window selectable, and they all override this function with their own draw item function. So let's look at what draw all items does. It's a very simple function. All of its code is over the course of 5 lines, and it says, okay, from 0 to the most amount of items that we can draw on this page, we grab an index, and then we say draw item of the given index. So this just says draw item for every single item. Now, if I look at, let me take this whole line and I'll Control F.
So,
Oh,
so
go
one
ahead.
question, and I think the paint model would be pretty good for this. Could you tell us what an item is and what like lists of items are in this
Oh,
context?
absolutely. Okay. So ironically, I actually think the yeah, no, let's use MS Paint. So we'll clear this. So an item in this context is essentially any piece of data. So it can be numbers. Oh god, I can't write things like Pirate Software can because I'm left-handed. So it could be numbers, or it could be, pretend these are brackets, structs. This is the worst thing I've ever done. Thank you for humoring me.
There, there, there's a text option. I just want to make you aware that you do not actually have to draw out
I know.
the
I'm
text.
just really trying to get the Pirate Software. So, an item is anything that is essentially an item is a piece of data, and that data can be numbers, structs. It can also be data items, data skills, actors, so on. So if we go into, let's say, I'll say draw item equals function index. Actually, before we get to that, I'll go to window skill list. And skill list has a function called make item list, which generates a list of items. It stores it inside the an array called data, and it goes, okay, so we get the actor, we get the list of skills, and then we find out which skills are included based on what we're filtering by. Like, you know, in the skill window, you're generally filtering by a skill type and things like that. Yeah, you can even see, make sure the skill type ID is equal to the skill type we're currently filtering by. So data in this case is an array which contains a list of skills, and these skills are data skills. So we might say this dot data equals, and then it would be data skills 1, data skills 2, and so on. And that is what this underscore data contains for the skill list. If we go to window item list, which of course several other objects inherit behavior from, if we find its make item list function, it goes, okay, game party, all items filter by, is this the type of item we're currently looking at? I'm not quite sure about includes null. I think that's just like a blank item, which I assume is just if you don't have any items, we just give you a blank item. But this, in this case, this underscore data is full of all of the items that the player has. So if we were to go to item list and we were to say, okay, item list dot prototype dot draw item, then we would say, okay, so whenever it's drawing an item, it grabs the index and then it gets a specific piece from its data value. checks to make sure the item exists, which is important because you can't draw from null. And then it says, okay, number width, we get the rect, we draw the item name, we draw the item number, which means the amount of copies of that item that you have. And we change its paint opacity depending on whether or not you can use that item at that time. So if I were to go into, I think I have a save file of, yeah. So if I were to go into my item window, I don't have any items. So I'll buy a couple items.
And the shop window here, that's an item list, right?
Yes.
Kind of similarly. So one thing that I would actually recommend is just go to like zero gold. Just go on a buying spree.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're seeing, right, that like a couple of them were grayed out. That's essentially what's happening here. Is that based on a criteria, right? And the criteria is different, right? But the shop window list like inherits from item list, right? It checks, okay, is this buyable? And if it's not buyable, right, to change the opacity, right? With sort of like with regard to the gold that the party has.
Yeah. And you'll notice that even though the effect of this is the text looks gray, this is not grayed text. We didn't change the color of the text. What we did is we changed the paint opacity, which means that the text is now transparent. And you may be able to see the icon is also kind of transparent as well. And that's what changed paint opacity is. And if I were to go into my item list, then let me show half of it on screen, and then we can also look at the code. So, except that I can't click on the code. So pretend I'm highlighting things. We get a width, and then we get a rectangle, and that rectangle is just how much space do we have dedicated per item. And that is the same rectangle that you can see is currently highlighting the first item. We change the paint opacity whether or not it's enabled. In this case, it being enabled is based on if I can use it in the menu or if I can only use it in battle and so on. And all of these items can only be used in battle, so they are disabled. And then we say draw item name, that's focus potion. Draw item number, and that's number 2. And then we change the paint opacity back to 1 to make sure that whatever we paint next doesn't cause any serious problems. Now, if I were to look at draw item name, I'm just guessing based on what I'm seeing here that draw item name would also include drawing the icon of the item next to its name. So I'm going to find draw item name. That's in window base. And it does indeed say draw icon and then draw text. So that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Cool. So that gives us a pretty decent idea of what items are and then how they're represented in item lists. Keep in mind that you won't necessarily always be drawing all the items in the list, but sometimes you can draw sort of the most relevant ones.
Yeah.
So if any of you have made games that have like 12 party members, right? Well, an example of a window selectable is the main menu selection for the actors, right?
That's exactly
so
right.
If you have 12, yeah, if you have 12 members in your party, but the restriction in battle is that you have you can only have 4 of them, right, at sort of any point in time, then they would organize themselves sort of on this list, right? And you would see that 4 of them are lit up, and then the rest of them below are either not shown, right, based on your resolution, or grayed out, right, to indicate that they're in your party, but they're not part of your battle members, right? The list of saves, right, is another example of an item list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
This is
and
an item
note
list.
that, like, yeah, right. It has more items than it can show within the viewport, right? Like at its resolution. So all that's being drawn is things from it would be index like 3 to 7, right?
So,
is that correct?
Draw all items. We can see that it grabs the top index.
Right.
So right now that's 2 here. So it starts from there, um, and then it draws as many as can fit. So we go from I to 0, and then I is less than max page items. In this case, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can only draw 5 at once. And then it says index is equal to I plus top index, which in this case is 0 plus 2, and it draws the second file. And it does that until
Okay.
it reaches either max page items or max items.
Yeah. So now that we know about items and item lists, how would we go about making our own window
Well, let
selectable?
me real quick. I just want to show off one more example of the code showing the window menu actor. No menu, actually window menu command. I think is good. No, that's the command window. It has command in its
Yeah,
name.
that's a command window. We'll cover that later in this plugin tutorial.
Window
They
menu
work a little bit
status. That's
differently.
what I'm looking at. So because I want to show you what its draw item function looks like. So it's calling 3 different functions which are sort of part of the draw item. But let's look at, for example, draw item image. Now, something to notice here is that when it decides to draw the item image, and in this case that's the actor, it grabs a reference to the actor by using game party members of the given index, and then draws the actor's face depending on whether or not it's enabled. And then when we draw item status, it does the same thing. It uses game party members. So window menu status actually does not have any direct reference to the list of actors in comparison to the item list and the skill list, which had a data array. Menu status does not have a data array because it doesn't need one, because gameparty.members is so easy to access. So sometimes if you're making a selectable window, you don't actually need to populate that window with items and then tell it how to draw the items. You just need to tell it how to draw the items, and then tell it how to obtain each individual item with a quick reference. So yeah, so before we moved on to making our own, I just wanted to quickly establish that is another way that we can that we can use a window selectable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's try and make our own window selectable.
And for folks watching the stream, feel free to follow along. And but if you want to get the plugin file later on down the line, right? We'll make this available in resources along with the stream. It'll have comments and all kinds of nice things for you to follow.
I'm just saving the file real quick. It's myth window selectable tutorial. Don't ask me why there are 2 underscores. So let's real quick look at window selectable just to make sure that we understand everything as we're starting it. So whenever you make a new object, it's useful to look at how new objects are made in RPG Maker. So it looks like we're gonna say okay, function window, and then let's since we wanted to play around with referencing cards, let's call it window card selectable, and we'll say this dot initialize dot apply. Please tell me I didn't misspell initialize. Yeah, it looks like I did it all right.
Yeah, doesn't look like it.
Typos are like the number one cause of pain in any programmer's body. So we'll say window card selectable dot prototype equals object create, and we want to use window selectable dot prototype as the base. So that's us telling the code to use window selectable as a parent class for this child, so automatically it inherits all behavior from the window selectable, and then we just give it a new constructor, and then I think we just need to say window card selectable dot prototype dot initialize equals, we'll say xy width height, and then we'll just call the original one. This xy width height. But we want to populate this with a list of actually first before we try to do anything else, let's just make sure that that this plugin is working like on its own, just to make sure we haven't screwed anything up. Windows selectable tutorial. So a quick way that we can test this is we can say, okay, I'll refresh, I'll open up the console, and I'll say var win equals new window card selectable, and then 0, 0, 100, 100, right? And then scene manager, scene, add window, win, and boom, that window exists. It's too small to do anything interesting, so next time I'm gonna maybe bump up those parameters. But good news, we haven't messed up so royally that we can't add a window to the game. So now let's take a look at how the item list generates its items. So we'll say window item list. So it has a variable called data in which it stores the data. That's pretty common for, something that's going to store a lot of data. And then it has a function somewhere called make item list. Now, I think it'd be useful to try and copy that. Make item list.
For the sake of clarity, I'm gonna ask that we don't build the window in scene title, rather just on the scene map.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just wanted to do that right off the bat. So we want to get a list of all the cards that the player has, and I believe that's all stored in where's core engine? Here it is. I believe that's card library. Sorry, I have a lot of references to a card library. Okay, I'm wrong about card library. Oh, maybe it's card list. Okay, hold on a second.
I mean, you can also just access card dot underscore data.
Yeah.
That's on the map that is effectively looking at the card library. Not the case deck. If you have deck editor. If you have deck editor, it's slightly different, right? But like it's more or less that.
Skill cards, that's the name of it. Skill cards is if you have deck editor, it's not going to be identical to card deck. It's going to contain all of the cards that you have, not just what's in your deck. So we'll say this data equals this dot skill cards. We'll want to say this dot actor dot skill cards. And then let's find out, where's make item list called. It's called in the refresh. Okay. So I see no reason not to just do one of these. Let's make sure that create contents is a function for okay, it's for window based, so we don't have to worry about it calling the function and then having a problem. So let's make sure that refresh is called. Okay, it's called whenever we set the top row. It's set. It looks like in window command it's set whenever we initialize. Well, it wouldn't hurt if we say this dot refresh right away, just in case. We can see if it works without the refresh call immediately. Just in case, let's do that. Let's also just real quick in refresh, let's say this dot actor equals game party dot leader. At some point we can make this more complex. We can set the actor to whoever is the actor that you select from the main menu and things like that. For right now, we're just going to say, make that the leader. And then the last thing that we need to do is say draw item. because draw all items, that's already set, but Windows Selectable's draw item is blank. Draw item equals function, and let's make sure we're doing it right. Draw item, it takes an index, and then from the index we can say var card equals this data index. If card, that's when we draw things. Now this card is a data object that the core engine has created. Let's check game card dot prototype. Make sure we know what all of the parameters are. So it's got an ID and an origin, and if you're using other extensions, it has a few other parameters. So it does not have a name. So if we wanted to draw the name, we'd have to say var
Data skills, right?
Yeah, var skill equals data skills card.id, and we say ID parentheses because that's a function. And now we can say, this dot draw text xy. Actually, we start with skill dot name xy. Let's look at another draw item to make sure, because we have an xy. We want to make sure var rect equals item rect for text. What is item rect for text? Let's check that out. So we get an item rect, and then we add text padding, and then we set the width to minus text padding. That's a Windows selectable.
So let's real quick describe what a rect is, right?
Yeah. So a rect, and I'll go back into MS Paint.
Yeah.
But I will not bother with that. So a rect struct with 4 parameters. There's x, there's y, there's width, and then there's height. So whenever you see at any point in RPG Maker, if you see any code that says rect equals this dot item rect, basically if you see any variable called rect, that rect in RPG Maker's engine is going to have these 4 parameters. And these parameters, if you may notice, they make a rectangle where the top 2 corners are the x and y. So you can't see it super well. Actually, I'm not sure if you can see it at all, but the coordinates of this rectangle are 419 by 179 within MS Paint. That would be the x and y parameter. And then the width is, if this is a width of 0, this is a width of bigger than that, and so on. So an item rect is the amount of basically the rectangle where the item can fit, and the item rect for text has an extra little buffer. You can see the difference between where the highlight starts and where the text starts, and that just makes things look a little cleaner. So item rect would be totally fine, but item rect for text just works a little bit better for text. Now I believe that draw text, let's make sure we're doing this right. So we need text, xy, max width, and align. So for the x, we need rect.x, we need rect.y, and then for max width, we can say rect.width, and then align will say left, so that way it aligns leftward. So assuming that I'm not forgetting anything, this should work well enough. And if it doesn't work well enough, then I've forgotten something, and that's okay. So we'll create a new window, and we'll make this, significantly bigger.
Yeah, and one of the things folks will notice about that initialize function, like the creation function, is that is a rect, right? That is what you're defining. It is x, y, width and height.
Yes, and actually, in MZ specifically, when you initialize windows, it doesn't take XY width and height. It just takes a rect object and it grabs the XY width and height from that rect object. So if you're watching this and you're an MZ user and you look at Windows Selectable and you're like, that's weird, it doesn't say XY width height, it says rect. Rect is XY width and height. They're exactly the same thing. However, if you if you don't format it right, it'll yell at you. So so something to be aware of. So I'm gonna create a new window and then I'm gonna add the window, and I'm gonna move around because I forgot that text is or that touch input is enabled. And it looks like
We might be missing some items.
it looks like we might be missing some items. So let's see where we went wrong. So we can reference the window and we can say, okay, what's its data? Its data is a series of game cards. We did do that correctly. So that's good. It is populating correctly, but it looks like we did something wrong with the draw item function. So let's see. Let's console.log card just to see, you know, what we can improve on. We'll hit new game so that we actually have a game party leader. We'll say this guy, and then we'll add the window. So that's interesting. When we call draw item, or I should say, when we think we call draw item, it should have console logged already if we successfully drew the items, but it's not doing that.
So one thing to keep in mind is that I'm not sure if draw all items is called automatically unless you add it to the like, you know, usually in like create all windows, like those functions.
I think we found our problem.
Oh, okay.
See, Windows Selectable has a max items of 0. Now, why would it have a max items of 0? Let's take a look at what other windows are doing that change this, so see if we can figure out why. So, window menu status uses the game party size as max items. Windows item list does this.data.length as its size, and it returns 1 if data does not exist. Skill list does the same thing. Equip slot uses the amount of equipment the actor currently has equipped. So it looks like max items is a function that, in the case of if we have like a set number of items, we just input that set number of items, and if we don't, then we use data's length. Now it looks like we need to make sure that we're doing that manually, because otherwise it's just going to be 0. So let's steal code from RPG Maker, hit save, and see if there's something else that went wrong. I don't have to hit new game. I can hit load game, but okay. So good news. Well, good news and bad news. So the good news is, I've created the window and I've added it, and you see where it says 10 undefined. Actually, maybe I should zoom in the console. Where it says 10 undefined, that's the console log. So it is successfully drawing the item. The bad news is...
It's just that the item does not exist, right? So every time it'll hit that if statement, it won't go inside because those are undefined.
So let's see what data 0 is. It's undefined. Let's see what data is. It has a reference to... Oh, you know what the problem is? This is completely my bad. This is a Isaiah mistake.
Oh yeah, we got a data.data situation.
we got a data.data situation. That is very confusing, because here's the thing. Data, I've tricked you all, by which I mean I've tricked myself, and now I'm pretending that I did it on purpose. Skill cards is not an array of cards. It is an object called game cards. And if I were to input that, that's a whole
It's game card.
So no, game cards plural. If I
Oh,
go
is
into
it
Core
because
Engine, yeah,
it's similar to like a deck or something?
yeah. So game card is an object which contains all of the card information. Game cards is an object which contains an array of cards, a length, and a name value, and a few other things based on what extensions you're doing. So that way we can have in the code, if I say new game cards, we can see I've got the card deck is called deck. So whenever you refer to the zone deck, it finds card deck because it looks for a game cards object with the same name that you're referring to, and so on. So that's a little Isaiah made his code complicated in order to make it work well, and that makes it work a little bit less well for the
So there's
tutorial.
a fairly easy fix for this. So if you go to Myth window selectable,
Mm-hmm.
um, right, and then you go to the make item list, shouldn't this dot underscore actor dot underscore skill cards dot underscore data do the job?
So that would definitely work. However, I there's another method that is more quote unquote appropriate. So the game cards object has a card function which returns the card. So in this case, what we would do is we would say this dot data dot card, and instead of brackets we want parentheses because it's a function call. Now that should return. Let's check to make sure. So we check to make sure that there is actually a valid thing at this particular index, and then we return that data at the index we requested. So it's a little bit confusing, and maybe we want to rename the data object in this specific Windows case just to make sure that we don't get things confused. But I think it's all right to
Yeah,
do it
won't
this way.
well, actually, won't max items just be wrong then?
So that's a fantastic question. If we look at game cards, it does indeed have a length parameter, which increases and
Okay,
decreases whenever we add a card or remove a card. So that
that'll still end up matching up.
yeah, so
Uh,
that'll still end up matching
okay.
up. So let's create another. Let's do this again, and we can see that now it's populated with game cards. We can see that in the console. Let's see what it looks like on the scene. It looks beautiful. We can see several cards, or at least the names of several cards.
Yeah, there's only one problem. You can't select the window.
Yeah, can't select the window. I'm moving the arrow keys around, and Harold's moving around. Not a care in the world. Completely ignorant of the window looming above him. So, let's take a look at let's take a look at how the code does it. So if I were to go to and I'm gonna ruin our pretty window. Oh God. Oh no. Okay. So so normally when I say okay, so I'm moving around, I'm gonna hit OK on status, and it's going to enable the status window. And I'm going to hit cancel, and it's going to disable the status window and re-enable the command window. So what's happening here? Let's see if we can find window menu command. Let's see if we can find out what it's doing. So add main commands is item. Let's see, it's item deck equip status. Well, not deck, but you know what I mean. This says add command text manager status enabled. We're getting into window command territory. This is a little spooky. I might have to look at the scene to see what, let's say I say on status, okay, maybe not. Let's try to find item.
Try
Okay,
looking underscore status window.
yeah, it would be.
Right, because in scenes they will usually save it as a variable
You're right.
inside the scene.
So status is associated with command personal. We'll get into what this code is doing in a second, but for now, let's look at command personal and see what it's doing. Let's just say command personal is called whenever I select, one of these things that opens up this window. And so it says, okay, status window, select last, status window, activate. So let's take a look at what select last does. And that's is that a skill list, or is that a selectable, or is that no, it's a menu command. Okay, so we don't need to worry about it. Let's look at what activate does. Now, activate, that's a window-based function, so we have that function. It's a window selectable function, so we have that function. It appears to be calling reselect. It's also saying active equals true. That function, or that variable seems to be important enough that if I were to, let's say I have to re-add the window. If I were to say cmanager dot, or no, actually I could just call win dot activate. Let's see what happens. If active is set to true, what does that do? Well, nothing is visibly changed, but maybe I can make some inputs. Now, a herald's still moving, but now we can see, let me get him stuck on a wall. Let me get him stuck between two walls. So now we can clearly see that I am able to move up and down on this window. And if I hit OK, what happens? Well, Harold is interacting with the window. That's what happens.
Because yeah.
But nothing happens when I hit OK, right? But we're still able to interact with things. So
Does anything happen when you hit cancel? Like, does it close the window?
Oh, that's a great question. No, it just opens the menu.
Oh no, it opens the menu.
Because we still have input enabled. But I believe that if you hit cancel right now, nothing will happen anyway. In fact, I could go into this menu and I could say I'll create a new window, I'll add the window, I'll activate it, and then I'll go scene manager, scene, and then it's command window dot deactivate. So now the normal window that I interact with, I can no longer interact with. Now I'm just interacting with this. If I hit OK, nothing happens. If I hit cancel, nothing happens. So the next question is, how can we make it so that hitting OK and hitting cancel does something? Let's see if we can find the information in window item list. Just because we understand that window fairly well at this point. It's what card selectable is based on most most directly. It's got a max column, it's got a spacing, it's got current item enabled, it's got included, select last, number width, update help, refresh, and that's the end of the window, which is weird because if I go into, and of course now I can't escape this window because I've disabled navigation outside of it, but if I hit OK on an item, something happens. So I've got another idea. He says lying because he already knows what you need to do. Let's find where window item list is created, and that's in scene item. So window item list is created. We've got an item window function, and then we have something called set handler OK, and it calls on item OK. We've got set handler cancel and on item cancel. Now you may notice that OK and cancel are the two buttons that we've been talking about this whole time. So maybe set handler is doing something so that when I hit OK, it calls item on OK, and if I hit the cancel button, it calls on item cancel. Let's see what on item OK does, just to make sure. It sets the last item and then it determines item. That's not especially useful. It sets item object, it determines if it's for a friend and shows a sub window. Yeah, so this is exactly what happens when we select an item in the item window. That functionality is not in the window, it's in the scene that creates the window. And when we create the window, we just say, okay, whenever you hit the OK button, call the scenes function. Whenever you hit the cancel button, call the scenes cancel function. What happens when we hit on item cancel? It just deselects and activates the skill type window. That's exactly what we expect to happen if we cancel on a window navigation. So, all right, fine. So now, in order to make things happen, we can't just add the window to the. Let me get rid of the console log. I don't think we need that anymore. So in order to get things to happen when we input things, we can't just add it willy-nilly to the scene. That's okay. Let's try and add it to. Let's add it to the main menu. You think that's probably all right? In that case, we're going to want to look at RPG scenes, and I know that that's scene menu, not menu base.
I'm gonna challenge you to make this on the map scene. The
Okay.
reason for that is because we need to sort of illustrate how to transfer control, right? Between like essentially the thing that's scene menu is doing, right? Let's see if we can accomplish that with this window card selectable.
Okay. In that case, let's go to scene map and let's see. So we initialize, we create on map loaded, start, update. Okay, hold on. I want to make sure that I'm putting this in the right place because initialize, create, and start kind of seem like they're all the same thing, right? So let me see how other scenes do this. So if I say new window map name. Oh, actually, scene map is already creating windows. Cool. I didn't even have to go that far. So create map name window, create message window, create scroll text window. Where are these being called? Oh, they're called in the create all windows function. That's extremely convenient for me, but I do still want to answer the question of where is this put. So that's in create display objects, and that is inside on map loaded. All right, this is not as it's not quite as succinct as I would like it to be. But regardless, we do have a create all windows function. That's super, super convenient because now we can say var scene map create all windows equals, and then we can get the original function. We're storing the original function in a variable. We're redefining the original function, and then we're calling the variable so that we still get the utility of the original function while still getting to do new things. And we'll say this dot create card selection window. Cool. Now we need to define scene map prototype.
Let's just slightly rename that to be create card selectable window, just to make it.
Oh, you're absolutely
read.
right. Thank you for catching
that. Because we do have a card selection window that works a little bit differently.
You're absolutely right. And so now we want to say, okay, how do we do this? This dot map name window equals new window map name. This dot add child map name window. That's the easiest function to copy and change the names of things in the world. Programming is copying and pasting and then changing the names. Boom. So now whenever the map loads, then this window will be added. Let's make sure that we're doing it properly. Interesting. Did I mess up? Hold on. It wouldn't be a programming tutorial live if I didn't overlook something.
So I think it's worth checking if you just open the console, just see if the window exists in the scene.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And if it does exist, then you should be able to open the window, right? And if it doesn't exist, then yeah, we're missing a step that is, or that particular one. So it does exist,
It
right?
does exist.
Um,
It's visible. Oh, I know what the problem is.
yeah. We need to give it like initialization
We
variables,
need to
right?
give it
So it's probably
initialization
defaulted like
variables. So we'll say 0,
right.
0, and then what was it? 800, 500. Yeah, so the
Yeah.
window exists.
Now,
It's just so
yeah,
tiny you can't see it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's 000,
Yeah.
like, or it's probably like undefined on all of them, right?
Mhm.
Because it doesn't know that those are that those are rect coordinates yet. Um, But something to keep in mind. So when you're looking through RPG scenes, right, or RPG windows, sometimes you will just see them saying new window, right, and not putting in any variables there. The reason for this is that some of the windows know that they will always be the same size, right? And so they'll just in their initialize function have those values effectively hard coded, right? Some of them will base it off the box width, right, or the box height. But yeah, essentially yeah. So when we look at is that a
Yeah,
is
that's a
that a typo?
typo. RPG Maker has a typo. That's really funny, actually.
Okay, that
Instead of width and height,
I
it's
mean
weight and height.
okay, all right. Well, but the good news is that they made the typo in the two exact places where it is needed, right? So um
They made the typo
so
twice,
nobody
so it's
nobody will
okay.
know. Yeah. But essentially, yeah, you're going to see this a lot where there's a window width and window height function, and those will sometimes have hard coded values. Now, in programming, you want to avoid this as much as possible, largely because, especially when it comes to UI, you you don't know the end resolution that like
Yep.
your like user may be working with. So you may want to make it like a function that you like calculate based on like the actual resolution. But in this case, right, they were like at least base RPG Maker isn't expecting you to change the resolution beyond 816 by 624. So with that, they already know the values that make the UI look good, right, or look consistent, right, across all of their things. And so they've decided, hey, 360 is what our window width is going to be for the map name.
Now, this is the easiest place in the world to turn into a plugin parameter. If I was, if I was going to write a function called window width instead of hard coding the value, I would give that a variable and then allow a plugin parameter to change that variable. In fact, I know that that's something that I can do because I've done it a ton of times in card game combat. Sorry, I had to stop myself from saying that in more harsh language. Um, but so, long term, we might not want 800, 500. We might want to turn these into variables that the user of our plugin can modulate. But for now, with that fixed, if I hit continue, we should see. That's right. Immediately, the window's here, but we can't interact with it. And why can't we interact with it? Because we forgot to say this card selectable window activate. Sorry, activate. I know how to spell, I promise. And we'll be able to interact with it. The player will still be able to move. If we want to solve that problem real quick, let's take a look at under what conditions the player can move. So maybe we want to go to game player.prototype and let's see if we can find out any information. Is transferring, fade type, perform transfer, is map passable, is normal. I'm always calling is normal and it's always returning false.
Was that programming joke? Yeah.
Okay, move by input. That's a great, if I'm making inputs, let me move. This says if not is moving, if you're not currently moving and you can move. Okay, so can move, that's the game player's function. And it looks like that is a couple things. If an event's running, if the game message is busy, return false. If it's in the middle of a route and gathers are following, return false. If you're getting on or getting off a vehicle, return false. If you're in a vehicle but the vehicle can't move, return false. Otherwise, return true. All right, that's a lot of if statements where we return false, but that gives us something to work with. We can say var game player can move equals gameplayer.canMove. Now, gameplayer.canMove equals function. Now, this returns a value. So whenever we call the original version, we need to say var canMove equals, and then we call it. Because it'll call this function, which will return true or false. We need to say, at the end, we'll say return can move. So that way, this is now a pass-through function. Then what we can say is if scene manager scene card selectable window dot visible return false. So if we can currently see the window, it's false. We might want to trade that out for active if we want something like the window is still present, you just can't interact with it. It really depends. I'll keep it as active for now.
Yeah, so one thing to sort of mention, so Windows will have like multiple variables like this that you'll see, right? There and also functions. So like show, hide, open, close. The distinction with these, right, is that so show and hide, those are binary states, right, where it'll flip visible like to true and false. But open and close, that's when the window sort of animates a little bit, right? Where like it starts at a certain width or a certain height, right? It'll start at 0, and then it'll extend right to its full height as part of an animation. The easiest place to kind of see this, I mean, as is showing this sort of on the screen, and this is default behavior for, I think, window base, right? Like window base, like has this, right? So pretty much every window can do this, right? So when you are making your own windows, I think consider, right, whether you want them to like just flip on, right, or whether you want them to kind of open, right? Opening like makes it look a little bit more polished, a little bit more smooth, but it really depends on the situation, right? So just be aware those are options that you have.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'll refresh and I'll make sure we'll hit continue, and this guy is active. I'm navigating around it, and Harold's not moving. And if I were to say dot deactivate, then you would no longer be able to interact with it, but Harold would be able to move around. So that's exactly the logic that we've implemented.
Yeah. And once again, there's a distinction between the window being closed and the window being deactivated. You will often see, and Isaiah, if you jump into the main menu, this is a good way to illustrate this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So right now, we in the main menu, we are in what is called the like the menu command, right? We'll get into command windows in a little bit. But this is a scene that has three windows currently. There's a command window, and then there's a selectable window. So let's say if you hit status, we move on to the selectable window. Actually, add a party member, and it'll be easier to sort of illustrate this.
Hold on, I have to.
Yeah, just close out deactivate out of that one.
I'll close it so that we can see clearly.
Yeah, add a party member and then go back into the main menu. So notice that the controls are working for the menu actor window, but not for the command window. This is because we have deactivated the command window and we've activated the menu actor window. So even though the same input is happening, right, you are not getting sort of double menu movement, right? Essentially, the menus cede control, right, sort of between each other to kind of create the experience. And now if Isaiah hits cancel, control returns right to the command window. So this is just something to be aware of when you're making your own windows and you're populating the game with them, is that what other windows are there in the scene, right? And also which one needs the input right now.
Yeah.
This becomes more important when you're dealing with windows in the battle scene, right? Because battle scene has like a lot of submenuing and things like that. But yeah, that's just again something to be aware of, right? When you active, you can have two windows active at the same time. We don't recommend it, right? Because they'll essentially be taking they'll be taking the same input, right? So what you usually want to do when there's multiple windows and you want to move between them is you activate one, you deactivate the other. And this is something that you will see when you go through RPG scenes, right? And look at some of those functions like item OK, item cancel, right? Is that they like on item cancel, they'll be like, okay, deactivate the window that the item list is on, right? And then sort of return to the previous menu or something like that.
There is one
All right,
last thing
aside over.
that I want to point out along these lines, which is that if I hit status, obviously I'm selecting the actors now, but the highlight on status is still present. It's not animating like it is for the active window to indicate that it's not the active window, but it's still selected, which is great. If I hit cancel, the actors are no longer active, but they are also no longer selected. And that is because not only is deactivate called when you hit cancel, but deselect is called as well. And that looks visually nice, but deselect is not called on status when you enter the submenu, just to make sure that you know what was the last thing you selected within the command window, to know what action you're going to be performing when you select something in the actor window. So generally speaking, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, the rule is whenever you navigate from a main window to a sub window, the main window stays selected. Whenever you navigate from a sub window to a main window, you deselect the sub window. And that helps players understand where they've navigated from and what settings they selected that led them to this to where they are now.
All right, so let's head back and like try to get our sort of window selectable to kind of work.
Yeah. So
So what
so
so what's missing at this point?
so right now what's missing is an OK button and a cancel button. Now I can look into it's on item OK, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
doing
let's
things.
sort of plan for what we want to do, right? So we have a window where we have a list of cards in our deck, but we want to okay it, right, and like have something happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good way of sort of demonstrating that like the okay is happening at this index is would we be able to like show card, right? That lines up with this particular index.
Yeah, I think that would work. In fact,
Yeah.
let me actually decrease the size of the window to make sure that we have space for the card.
Right.
On the right
So
side.
the idea, yeah. So the idea with this window is that it's sort of a deck previewer, right? Like you don't have to go into the main menu to look at the deck. Rather, you're just sort of like going through this window, and then you can like you can essentially select a card, and then it'll just call the show card function, right? That lines up with your selection.
And I think when we hit cancel, I think it's very simple. I think we just want to close the window and go back to navigating on the map.
Sounds good.
So let's go ahead and say, okay, this is the code that's doing this. I want to look at what set handler is doing, but first I want to copy it down. So we're gonna recreate this setup, and then we're gonna try and understand it. So game players at the bottom, we want to do scene map first. We can say this dot card selectable window dot set handler okay, and then it looks like it's this dot function dot bind this. So let's see, this dot on card selectable okay dot bind this. And then we need to add scene map dot prototype dot on card selectable okay, and that's just an empty function for now. And then we'll do the same thing with cancel, and we'll do the same thing with cancel. So if I go in here, when I hit these buttons, these functions will be called. I'm going to try and get the cancel thing to work first because it's just going to be much simpler. So let's see what cancel is doing. Item window deselect category window dot activate. That's very straightforward. But I think we want this dot card selectable window dot deactivate. This dot card selectable window dot close. Easy peasy. One might even call it lemon squeezy if we're being entirely honest. Okay. So let's see how this works. So it is thinner. That's good. We can navigate. And I'm going to hit cancel. And I forgot that it will open the menu. That's very silly of me.
Yeah.
I just fully forgot that was something that it would do. Change menu access. Disable menu? Maybe we don't want to disable menu.
Yeah.
Let's see where is menu enabled. Let's see where that's called. That is called in RPG scenes. Update call menu. And player isn't moving. So maybe we'll scene map is menu enabled. So we look at game system is menu enabled, game map is event running. Let's override this and add one more thing. var scene map is menu enabled. Trying to type as quickly as possible. Surprisingly causing not that many options. Or not that many issues. Just a couple typos. If this dot card selectable window dot active.
One question: don't we want to do call this on the is enabled?
Oh, you're so right.
Because we want their previous result, right?
I was just talking about how trying to type fast hasn't caused any major issues. Now here it was about to cause an issue. So let's try this again. If I hit cancel, it closes the window. And if I go to a new map, yeah, it'll open it again because it happens whenever the map is loaded. So if I hit cancel, it loads or it closes, and then we can navigate.
Now, can we still open the main menu? This is very important.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. No, I cannot open the main menu.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, it's because I didn't say active, I said activate. I'm glad you asked, because I fully would have just overlooked it completely. Okay, good news.
We did it.
But here we run into something interesting, because whenever you leave the menu scene, you enter the map scene, and because this window is created whenever we enter the map scene, that means that it becomes the thing that's active. I don't think we need to fix that right now, but that is something that you should keep in mind. So we currently have on card selectable cancel, we have that done. On card selectable OK is blank, but we do still have a handler set for it. Even though the function it calls is blank. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to see what happens. Now, this is interesting. I hit OK, and it immediately deactivated the window. So now I can move around. Even though my function is empty, because the handler is set and the handler is called, it deactivates. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay, set handler, symbol, method. This dot handlers of the given symbol equals method. Is handled, call handler. These are not the clearest written functions in the world. It's not the easiest thing to parse what's going on. So let me.
So let's talk about symbols for a little bit, because I think that's a fairly easy concept.
Okay. Yeah, so simple. In fact, let me drag this over to the right, give it a little bit more space, and then go to the scene. Uh, it's yeah, status menu, command formation, whatever. Um, Let me actually find. Yeah, here we go. On actor OK. Um, so set handler is calling. It's passing a string containing OK and then a function. Well, symbol method is another name for a function, and then symbol appears to be a string. So if I say this underscore handles with an index of symbol equals method, well, in the past we've talked about how objects and data structures work in such a way that I'll say var obj equals new object, and if I just say obj, that returns an empty object. And if I say obj dot param1 equals 11, then when I say obj, I get param1 equals 11. We've talked in the past about how there are two ways to access data members of an object. So you can say obj dot param1, and that's fine. But another thing you can do is obj and then param1, and it's already filled out because we did it last time. Uh, and so what's happening here is handlers is an object which contains a bunch of data members, and those data members can be accessed by calling the name of the data member, but it can also be accessed by passing a name as a string through the index. And that also means that I can say equals 12, and then when I call obj.param1, it'll return 12. And that's exactly what's happening here. So the symbol is the data member that we are adding to a handler. In fact, I'll even say param2 equals hello. So now if I just call obj, there are now two data members. One of them is param2, and it contains hello. So using this system, I've created a new data member. Now we can pass a variable that represents the name of a variable into an object this way. So this dot handlers dot OK equals method when symbol is OK. Essentially, that's what's going on here. I hope.
So I think so that wasn't quite what I was referring.
Okay.
Basically, so just to sort of quickly run through it. What the set handlers are doing is they're effectively defining these, like, what the basic input operations are, like what function it is associated with in your window, right? Like OK and cancel can be used for a lot of different things, like when you're doing menuing. And then what this lets you do is you can have OK do one thing in one menu and another thing in another menu. A very good, easy example for this is that, for example, like when you're trying to feed an item, right, to an injured party member, right? So you go to the inventory, which is an item list. You hit OK for kind of for the item, and then at that point, it'll just open like this sort of actor menu, right, where you select who is the target, right, of the item that you're going to use. But then when you hit OK in that submenu, it'll consume the item and heal that party member, and that was the same input, right? But essentially, the context of the input is changing depending on which menu you're in, and that is the second part of this function, right? Mm-hmm. That is the function that you're assigning to this, right? So some of you may have done like controller mapping, right? For a game, right? You're like, okay, A is this, B is this, X is this, Y is this. That's what's going on here, right? At a script call level.
Yeah, and so we call the OK handler, and that calls the handler, which calls the method stored within OK. We can scroll up to find that process OK. Let's see, just I'm just going to assume that process OK is called. I gotta find the earliest example of it. On touch, maybe
It's
not.
right. It's right above you. It's right above you.
Look, look. That's called
So
whenever. Go ahead.
yeah. So the window selectable one I think is a good one, right? Because it's gonna reveal a thing about RPG Maker, right? Very quickly. So go to the one that like has the sounds also kind of with it. I think it's like the next example. So just yeah, okay. Um, so if you take a look at this process, okay, right? So first there's an if statement, which is the current item enabled or not enabled. So what this is doing is that it's looking at the current item that your cursor is hovering over, and then if you are able to use it, like if it is white text, right, then it goes into the first if statement. But if it is grayed out, you've had this experience before. It plays the buzzer sound, which is just a function call, right? um, and and if you are able to use it, it plays the OK sound. Again, the thing that you do pretty much on a daily basis, right? Updates the input data, which is depend like it'll depend on like what that window is, and then it'll deactivate the window, right, and call the OK handler, which our window is already doing,
Yeah.
right? When you hit OK, um, right, on any of those, it'll just deactivate the window.
Yeah. Now you'll notice that the OK handler is whatever we set it to. We've set it to on card selectable OK, which is an empty function, but it is still deactivated because that is a separate thing that happens when we process OK. And that's why whenever you hit the button, regardless of if there's anything interesting in the function, as long as you have set an OK handler, when it calls OK, it will understand, okay, now it's time to deactivate the function. And if I were to say process cancel, it's also doing that. It's also saying deactivate, which means that when we said deactivate, we didn't even need to do that. I could just, get rid of the deactivate call, and then I hit cancel, and it's still deactivated, and we know it's deactivated because I can move around. And as long as it's active, I can't move around. So,
All right, so let's actually do the process OK, right? So the thing
yeah.
that we want this to do.
So, yeah. So on card selectable OK, let's take a look at what on item OK does. It says set last item this dot item. That's seen items item. So what is dot item? What is that? It returns item window dot item. Ah, okay, that's good, because that means that now we can go back to RPG Windows and take a look at window item list dot prototype dot item, and that returns the data at the current index. Okay, very neat. So we can pretty much accomplish that by saying, okay, var item equals, let's say, this dot card selectable window. Oh, come on. It's not gonna autofill now. There we go. Dot item, and now I gotta define a function up here which says, honestly, I'll just do this, except that instead of data index, we gotta say data card index, just because this data object is very special. Now what it's doing is it says, okay, if data exists and index is greater than or equal to 0, if it's -1, that's no good. So if it's good, then we return an object. If it's not good, we just return null. Just to be like, okay, we have to specify that we're returning something. If index exists outside of, for example, an array value, then we'll get an error. So we need to do some error handling there. Okay, so we've got var item equals this card selectable item. That is a card. Let's look at how show card works. And there should be... Yeah, there's a show card function, because of course there is. Now, that takes a skill ID XY angle index. I already know what the index is. That's something that if you've paid close attention to the show card plugin, um, if index is omitted, it'll find a new index. Let's set it to 0 because we really only want one index. Um, so we'll say, hold on, I've already forgotten game interpreter. Okay, so we know how to access the interpreter. That's game map interpreter dot show card, and we'll say 400, 100. No, I need the skill ID first. So we'll say item.id, and then 400, 100, and then angle index. So that should be 0, 0. On card selectable, okay. And then because the window becomes inactive when we call the OK handler, but in our specific case, we don't actually want to deactivate it. We just need to say this card selectable window dot activate. We just need to reactivate it, which is completely fine. So now, assuming that I understand my own plugins well enough, God, I really shouldn't tempt fate by saying that. So if I hit OK, good news, it's drawing the card, and I'll change that to transmute, and I'll change that to backswing, and I'll change that to block. Now the location could definitely use some changing. So maybe we change that to 600, 200, right? But it's working exactly as we wanted it to work. Very neat. And I'm going to hit cancel, and we have a problem. The card's still here.
But we have a function that we can clean up the card with.
We sure do. That should be hide card. Yep. Hide card skill ID, hide card by index. That's going to be what we want. Or maybe we'll just call hide all cards. That seems like the safe thing to do. So
actually, I think we should just use hide card by index because we already know the index.
That's true.
And again, this is theoretically because again, we're building the window in isolation. We don't necessarily know when in the game you would want to call up this window. Like, let's say that you want to call up this window, like you have like one of those card reward boosters, right? You have like 3 cards to select with, and you want to check your deck sort of at the same time, right? So you would call this window to check your deck to see, do I really need this card, right? But when we deactivate this window, we actually don't want to hide all cards because we still have cards showing up for the card rewards, right? In this sort of theoretical example. So anyway, that's why I would recommend using hide by index instead of hide all cards, because we don't necessarily know if like other cards are there, right, in the context of the scene.
That is an extremely good point. It's always going to be thinking about if you're writing a plugin, especially if you're writing a plugin for other people to use, it's always extremely important to think about how can I build this in such a way that it does not get in the way of other people's work. How can I make sure that this plugin works regardless of the setup that other people are using? And just making sure that we're only messing with our own things is a great way to do that. So we've just about done in an hour and a half what we thought would take an hour. So business as usual for programming tutorials, I guess. How are we feeling?
So yeah, I think so. I think checking an energy level. So I think I think this is a good opportunity, folks in chat. If you're still there, you're absolute troopers. We know this has been pretty heavy on the programming side, right? So feel free to ask sort of any questions, right? Any clarifications. If it doesn't make sense now, it will make sense when you sort of go back through it, right? And you'll be able to sort of replicate the exact same kind of setup that we're doing. One question I have for you, Isaiah, is that energy level wise, do you feel like you can cover command window as well? Because I don't necessarily want to push that towards next month. I think next month we may want the stream to focus on something different, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have I'm not sure that we have time for it. Uh,
Okay.
slash energy for it, because if we have 30 more minutes, and I'm okay going a little over time, but if selectable took an
Hmm.
hour and a half, I don't think command is going to take 30 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think it's going to take
that
longer.
that's a little bit of yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. But I think we can still like send off the stream with something a little bit useful. So Isaiah is already demonstrating that like we can show sort of different types of text, right? Like on the cards, on the items, right? We can sort of clarify them a little bit. I think another thing that would really help with the sort of define the window is that what if we have the icon, the skill icon, in front of the name,
Absolutely.
so it sort of form, yeah, and that would be a pretty good way of doing this.
Now we
Okay,
can we
Rockawire
can
says, "Oh, good, you're still going." Yeah,
now we can do that by saying draw icon and then draw text. Um, but something else we
but
can
we
do
actually
is,
want to grab the width, right? So that there's sort of enough spacing between the icon and the name.
so I think we're probably better off calling draw item name in this case. We
Oh, because
have
it yeah, it's already formatted that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we can say this dot draw item name, and then we pass the skill, and then rect dot x rect dot y, and what other parameters does it need, and then width. And I think rect dot width is good. We might want to say rect dot width like over 2 in order to make sure there's space for learned or equipped, or maybe over 3 times 2, and then give card origin 1/3 space. I'm not going to worry about that right now. The way I see it,
So
if
the other recommendation I would have. So I think the item name is good for the card origin. Rather than having learned and equipped in full, would it
Mhm.
be possible to, depending on the card origin, we put either L or E, right?
Okay, yeah,
This is yeah, like just as a like because we need that indicator there. I would completely agree, but I think that when you're sort of formatting it in like an item list, right? Having like a bunch of like learned,
yeah.
equip, that may be a little bit tiring on the eyes. This is also this like so this I think illustrates a difference in how Isaiah and I code. Uh, I would have just thrown a ternary operator inside the function call, which is a big no-no for Isaiah.
Now here's the thing: there are more than 2 possible origins within our
They absolutely are. Yeah.
So I don't remember what all of them are off the top of my hand, hilariously. But the reason that I did it this way specifically was so that if there's an origin that we're not currently accounting for, it'll just be blank, and then we can identify that.
Yeah. This another difference between Isaiah and my code is that at this point I would have just made it a switch statement because JavaScript allows you to make switch statements with strings, which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Look at
Okay.
all
Yeah.
those
This is
L's.
yeah. This yeah. I mean, like really taken down. But again, this window just looks fresher now, right?
Yeah.
You have different yeah, you have the icons to sort of help you. One thing that you could potentially do is you could like try to like collapse like cards of the same type.
Hmm.
All you would need to really do is that in that sort of draw item, you just have sort of a check of like, hey, do I already have this? Okay, maybe I don't show it, and maybe I instead increment a number that I draw like in the item rect,
Yeah.
right? There's many different ways of doing the formatting, right, for your window. Take a look at the way that item lists are done across the different windows, right, in RPG Windows, right? Uh, because yeah, different items for different purposes. Like the save menu, right, is an example of an item list, right, and it formats its stuff pretty differently from the way that we would do
Yeah.
this little card viewer. Many people have requested like having like a collection viewer. Maybe this is it. No, we would actually want to make a scene for that, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll cover that at a later plugin tutorial, how to make your own scene.
Yeah. Oh, yo, absolutely. I think once we get through command window, I mean, once we get to command window, we have enough material to make an entire scene with, because we'll have all three of the different window types covered. And I mean, it's hard to make a new command window within an old scene without completely changing the scene. So I think that's the logical next step, unless we want to take care of plugin parameters first.
For this particular plugin.
For I'm just talking about what we tutorialize next.
Let's ask the patrons, right?
Yeah.
Let's ask the general community, right? Like what they feel like the next topic should be. This was a pretty big one, right? Like making your own windows, right? Is like when you're like trying to customize like RPG Maker, like to make your games, right? This is half the like UI is half the battle,
Yeah.
right?
I would even say,
Right.
depending on the game, it's more than half.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So hopefully you all felt that like this would be useful. And again, we're using this in the context of card game combat, right? Because like we just have like a list of like data. If you want to do this with like, like data skills, right, or a particular set of items, or like make your own like bestiary plugin, right?
Yeah.
Like you go through like the enemies, right?
Yeah.
You can do it in a very similar setup, right? Than the one that we've shown.
You can just pass data enemies through this way, and then you just need their name to display, and then if you want to add like an icon or something associated with them, maybe maybe you can just draw their battler name directly. That could be fun. But yeah, so you can really just use any set of like any array of information. You can turn that into a selectable window.
Okay, so before we leave off, folks in chat, any last questions? Feel free to also type in like what you would like to see Isaiah cover next. Our next topic will probably end up being command windows, right? And if that takes as long as this did, right, then we'll leave scenes, right, to the one sort of after that. So long as we sort of keep a monthly schedule with these, hopefully you feel that we're slowly building up to something, right? Um, over the course of these plugin tutorials, we've shown you like a lot of little bits, right? Maybe we'll do like a small project, right? Kind of down the line that brings these all together.
I'm going to make a card game with them. Wait, shit, I already did that.
Yeah, a little bit. So Ravso says in chat, voting for UI Basics crash course if available. I mean, we are covering some of that material. So I think we would just sort of continue like
Yeah.
sort of down the line. So we've gone from we did window base, right? We pretty extensively did window base, right?
Yeah.
For one of our plugin tutorials. And now we've covered window selectable. So the next part is window command. There's not any other major window types to cover, right? Other than those three.
Yeah, once you understand those three, you genuinely, there is exactly one window that this information doesn't help you with, and that's battle log.
Which I can cover because yeah, because yeah, battle log is very special.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like battle log would like it has enough material to cover for an entire kind of session, but I do think that for the most part, most people want to stylize the battle log. They want to work with like the text manipulation stuff, and that allows us to get into like strings, right, and string manipulation, like in doing like trim, right, and the battle log itself it has a lot of access than you would expect a window to have. Battle log can call animations, which is wild to me, right?
But like,
I don't know why Battle Manager doesn't have the capability, but Window Battle Log does.
yeah, battle log is very silly. But like, seriously,
Yeah.
so like this is, this window is a command window. This is a selectable window. The gold window is window base. If I talk to Warlock, the message window is a base window. The like selection window is a command window. If I go into the item shop, this is a command window, the help window is a base window, the list of items is a selectable window, and then the window at the right is possession. If I buy something, it opens another window that is a selectable window. Um, like genuinely, like they're all those three windows. Every other window in the game, you will instantly understand how they work. Well, I say instantly. What if you fully understand the three parent windows, you will almost immediately fully understand the rest of the windows in the game.
Okay, so with that, we'll be signing off for this one. Thank you for staying on with this one. This one was very programming heavy. We knew that was the case kind of going into it, and yeah, it turned uh, into a little bit more like sort of more of that of yeah, us just sort of reading code in different places, right, and figuring out what functions needed to be there. So, for those of you that like kind of got lost in the middle, don't worry. We'll be posting the plugin that we've developed, right? This Myth window selectable for you to sort of view, and we'll sort of comment the code, right? So that it's a little bit easier to kind of understand as you're reading through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any sort of last things you want to say, Isaiah, before we close out the stream?
I think video games are really cool.
They are. They absolutely are.
I didn't have any prepared statements, so I just went with the default. Actually,
Yeah.
upon reflection, I would add, I really enjoy doing these. I know they can get dry, but I mean, I think it's fun to make tutorial stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. So with that, we'll be signing off, and you'll be seeing us hopefully a little bit earlier next month, right? But it really depends on like when we find the best window to do one of these streams. So look forward to it.
All right, see y'all later.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.